There we go. Wonderful. Well, look, welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Preparing the Unprepared. Today, I'm going to be speaking to Andrei Lopatenko, who's the VP of Engineering, Search and Conversational AI at Zillow Group. Andrei actually picked up his PhD in computer science from the University of Manchester in 2007 and has over 2 decades of experience working in tech for some of the most prestigious companies in the world, including Google, Apple, Walmart Labs, eBay, now, as I mentioned, as well at Zillow Group. So on top of that, Andrei has founded and co-founded some of his own startups. One of them actually went on to be acquired by Facebook in 2017. And he's been a keynote speaker at many NLP and machine learning events and has given much of his spare time to supporting universities as a visiting professor across the USA. So welcome to the show, Andrei.
Hello, everybody. Thank you very much for inviting me to this podcast. Hi, everybody.
Awesome. So look, today's focus is going to be around building a successful career in natural language processing, which Andrei is very familiar with. So we're going to take a look into his journey, his education, where he's been, where he's traveled to, some of the companies he's worked for. We're going to be talking about why natural language processing. We're going to go into the foundational skills that we think every successful NLP expert or someone looking to pursue a career in this space should know. We are going to talk about where we are today in terms of NLP and how far we can realistically go, based on what's available to us. And then lastly, we're going to talk about advice and best practices for people who are looking to make a start and building their careers in natural language processing. So very keen to kind of dive straight in and learn a little bit more about your journey, Andrei, because we've only known each other for a short period of time. So why don't you just kind of start from the top?
So you would like to tell me about my journey, right? Give a review.
Yeah, please do.
Yes, I can start. So let's go from beginning to now.
Yeah.
What the direction is. So I did my PhD. So actually my first degree was in physics. My first degree was in physics, and it gave me a very good background in mathematics. Like theoretical physics requires a lot of math, multiple different areas of math, starting from linear algebra to, of course, calculus, to complex analysis, to statistics, and so on. My PhD was in computer science. It was from the University of Manchester, United Kingdom. And it was more like about traditional databases, distributed databases, query rewriting, and so on. After that, I moved to search, and I started my career in industry in Google in 2006. It was an interesting story, actually. So I was hired by Google Mountain View, but they had quotes, like H-1B quotes, finished for that year, and they asked me to select any other Google office around the world. We put there for 1 year, then we will move you to California. So I moved to Google Zurich. I decided to start with Google Zurich, and it was very good choice because it was very small office. Now I think it's like 2,000 or 3,000 people. It was around 50 people at the time. It was very small office, and it was I think one of the first places when Google decided to do search outside of Mountain View in 2006. Yeah, and I was very lucky to get into the core search team, into one of the core of the Google. We did a lot of huge improvements, and basically after that I moved to Google, relocated me to Mountain View, and I was working in Google for years. I was working for search, foundational algorithms of search, how to improve core search. And it was a really exciting journey, when you're just after PhD, right? And you can make a code change, you launch something, and it affects billions of people around the world, right? And you observe it, you launch your change yesterday, and now Japan is using, then China, then Russia, then European countries, step by step, billions of people start using what you developed. Comparing to comparing to PhD, when you do it to publish paper, now you have billions of people using your algorithm.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Then I moved to Apple. I was 2 people of us. We built search for Apple Maps, and then we hired a team of around 11 people. So we built Apple Maps search. Then I was back in Google working on universal search, like how to mix the results of different search engines and how to do Google Maps. After that, I was back in Apple as co-contributor for iTunes App Store search, and it's like one of the biggest online, of course, properties of Apple. It was 16 billion revenues at the time. Now is much more for app search. After that, I moved more to leadership. I was already tech lead in Apple, but then basically I moved to Walmart Labs when I started leading search science team.
Yep.
It was exciting journey, like Walmart is, I think at the moment it was like second e-commerce property after Amazon, and of course search is like really important. And like when you talk about search and everything about Google, Apple, Walmart, whenever we talk search, NLP is like very big part of the picture. And then basically I moved to Walmart. I was working in Walmart on search. My team was working on search. We brought, perhaps it's not public yet, but brought several very big by conversion gain, by amount of revenue per session gain, like a double-digit percentage gain to the Walmart. It was like huge improvement. After that, I started leading engineering, not just search, but not only search, but engineering team for artificial intelligence lab of Recruit Holding. Recruit Holding is not like, it's like very big, like a Japanese holding of like 100 companies, and they have artificial intelligence lab. After that, I was leading in eBay search science team. It's distributed team, like again, everything related to search in eBay, to search science in eBay. And currently, 2 years, I'm in Zillow, and there are several teams, and all of them are NLP heavy. One is search, everything related to search, from like infrastructure to search science to deployment, and another is like there is very big area what we call conversational AI. Typically, when you talk, like when people talk about conversational AI, they mean bots. It's not true. It's much more. In Zillow, we have like very big development related to different applications of NLP for business. So this is like briefly my journey in NLP search.
Yeah, awesome. I'm really intrigued about the kind of work you guys are doing at Zillow. I'm not sure how much you can talk about it, but I say that because I use the application quite often myself. I love looking at real estate. I'm really impressed by how it works. The search tools and the recommendation algorithms that are set up seem to be very, very accurate to the kind of stuff that I like when I'm looking for homes. Why Zillow? Obviously, you've worked with some amazing companies in the past. What made you choose Zillow?
Multiple motivations, right? One of the like really exciting thing about search when you work on search is because everybody uses search, right? When you come to Google, everybody uses Google. When you come to Amazon, you buy stuff, but how do you buy stuff? Like your Walmart, you go and search this, right? Yep. So it's like if you're like for me, it was always fascinating how much impact you can bring to people life. And like whatever you come to any website, right? Search is the first how you interact with people and how you bring value to the people.
Yeah.
Of course, like like financial system payments, they come, you cannot do out without them, but they kind of like more like straightforward. And while search has unlimited potential, how it can bring. And Zillow, so I work for web search, map search, app search, right? Digital distribution includes books, e-commerce search, and now house search. And what's really exciting about Zillow, right? Think about the impact of search has on people life, right? Of course, it's good when you can find a good page about something. Like you're watching a movie, would like to know more about characters, right?
Yeah.
It's good when you can help people to buy a product, like something, right? But like when you can help people to buy a house, right? And it's one of the most important purchases in life, which decides how people live, right? Is totally different. So Zillow, I would put in sense of impact on people's life. It's one of the biggest search properties, right? It's not just because you spent $1 million, whatever, buying house, right? It's impact on your life. And like helping people, like this is a search property such that, of course, when people buy house, it's not just it's not like they type something and they select first results, right?
Yeah.
But search is good. It a lot of process going after search, right? But certainly search can significantly help you, you have multiple houses. Like if you go and search in, let's say, Seattle, have 10,000 of houses, and maybe something is really good for you, but it will be somewhere down that you will never even discover by clicking on it, right? And if in Google you will not find a page, it's kind of okay, right? Maybe you will not find information. Sometimes it can be very important information, but it's kind of tolerance, risk factor is smaller. But here, like if you will not find the best house for you, certainly it will be much bigger impact on your life. And Zillow is one of those like huge opportunities when you can bring huge impact on human life. And it was one of motivation. And another motivation for me was I was talking like it was 4 years ago to one person who understands really well real estate business, and like this person brought me this perspective, right? Real estate is one of the like biggest industries in the United States, right? It's multi-trillion industry, but which had like really very little innovated up to now by digital transformation, by AI, and so on, right? If you consider e-commerce, right, you had traditional supermarkets, shops like groceries, bookstores, and suddenly Amazon and Walmart have a huge chunk. It was big transformation how people buy products now. While real estate has huge potential, it's like really like 100 billion potential to move to new space, but it's still very traditionally run industry. And of course, you can imagine how much impact, like because of Amazon, how as people, how lives they improve. Like, like I want to buy something now, I don't need to go to
it's like that.
You can imagine
it arrives tomorrow. I mean, I think they're even doing a 2-hour window now where you can order groceries and it'll be at your door in 2 hours. It's incredible.
Exactly. Now with like the COVID situation, it's a lot of risk to go to physical store, right? So like Amazon really changed life for people. And now the same we can do with real estate, well, by deploying different services online, and we can change life of people. And like how to buy house or how to sell house, how long this process, it takes months of your time. And like companies like Zillow, they have a opportunity to change this, and it's like first multi-billion industry, and totally big impact on people's lives. That's why it was also for me very exciting to bring this value to people.
I'm not sure I was expecting that answer, if I'm honest, Andrei. When I thought of Zillow, although I get a lot of pleasure out of using the app, I never thought of the actual impact of the work that the people are doing when you do go, because it's pretty much your single-handedly biggest purchase you're making in most people's lives, right? And I now looking at it can really understand why and your reasoning behind how that's exciting. So natural language processing, when you started in the industry, did you see it getting to where it is now, where we do have the ability to automate so many tasks, to be lazy, right? NLP makes people lazy in some cases. Did you see the industry being where it is now? Did you have like a big forward-thinking vision of where it could go?
It's a very interesting question. It has multiple different parts, right? So let's talk first about impact of NLP. How big is this? How much it brings value to the people, right? So there is some kind of trend now when people say that NLP is something new, right? Like we never had transformers or attention before. NLP bring totally new perspective, right? We can construct like chatbots. There is this kind of hype-based media attention to NLP. For me, it's not a big surprise, because if you consider like what the companies I work on, like Google, Apple, Walmart Labs, Zillow now, right? But what I like talking about my career 15 years ago, Google, right? NLP was always very important, right? Maybe it was a bit different, but impact of NLP, different techniques. Of course, it was more traditional techniques 15 years ago. It was condition random fields like CVM, so on for classification. You can do a lot of stuff now with techniques developed based on deep learning quite recently, and you can do with much better quality. But that NLP have so big penetration into different technologies and so big impact on consumers is by no means surprise for me, because the same 15 years ago, Google was heavily based on NLP. Maybe we would not even call NLP in many cases. We just need to understand how to query similar to each other, and we apply some techniques, right? Machine learning, we would not say NLP at the moment, just not using word, but it was NLP, and it was very, and the same, it's not just about chatbots as people hype now, right? It's product recommendations, how many features you can extract using NLP techniques from product description, how much you can understand, everything based on NLP. So by impact, right? So it's no surprise for me. It was the same 15 years ago. Google, Apple, Walmart Labs, everybody is heavily based on NLP, used in many different parts, not just search, many different parts of the technology stack. From impact on of course, recent NLP revolution, like what will happen after attention, transformers, deep learning. Of course, I would say it's pretty big surprise, right? How much progress done in very short period of time. So I would say NLP is really revolutionized. So many of these tasks, like I remember, let's say I need to do entity extraction, right? I need to do classification. 10 years ago, it was a lot of, I would say, quite manual work. So, what technique, try multiple different techniques, but then how to tune them, how to tune hyperparameters, what features to use them. So it was doing, let's say, assume 10 years ago, building Apple Maps. So we want to understand, is this type query, is this location query, is this address query? It was pretty big, significant project with a lot of experiments, manual features, and improvements were demanding quite a lot of work, right? Now you can do similar projects much faster with significantly less of manual feature search, with feature engineering, feature estimation, right? So this progress in NLP is really huge and can impact all this industry and all the applications of NLP to multiple different business and consumer-oriented facing applications. It impacts now, and I would say this progress in NLP quality and NLP technologies is pretty big surprise for me, and I think it's really great that we can apply this to so many different business applications.
Yeah, and do you think that we've kind of plateaued in terms of the innovation part, or are we still going to see things next year, the year after, that are going to shock us when it comes to NLP? That'll be like, wow, that's some serious progress. Or is it more about quality, improving on quality and feedback in that respect?
I don't see we are close to plateau, right? If you read papers which come now, there are a lot of innovations and people improving state-of-the-art models and going here better and better. But I think the real revolution should happen within the next 5 years, not just about improving vertical, but improving quality of the models, right? We're doing pretty well in many areas with that level of precision, whatever perplexity. You can solve a lot of tasks, and then if you improve by 1% quality of your language model or quality of your extraction model, it does not mean that you bring the same percentage to business revenue, so consumer satisfaction, quality of the service. I think the next important revolution, and which I observe it started in NLP, is more about horizontal expansion. Let's assume we don't improve models anymore. They will be improved a lot, but let's assume they sort of as it is now. How to make them such that every, and you can imagine, assume you have some company, right? How much it can use NLP? But then every business is based on some documents, processes, right? Can we classify documents such that it will be very easy to route them to the proper person? What about consumer support? How about customer tickets and so on? So I believe, and what I see, a lot of progress in NLP will be how to make NLP applicable, not just to improve 1, 5, 10% quality of the model for hard task, but how to apply it everywhere in the business. And it will be a huge impact both on customer services, but also business revenue and so on.
In order to do that, Andrei, or our business is going to need big teams of NLP folks then? Or is this something that, someone who's doing machine learning, data science right now could just kind of hop on and make an impact on? Do you need NLP experts in your business to be able to do that, or can other computer science kind of centric roles fill that seat?
In most of these cases, you will still need NLP experts to drive this effort. But if you want to expand, if you want to expand it, right? Consider some company which has multiple different lines of business, and each of them can benefit from NLP. As this progress goes on now, and it's more like how to make NLP more available and available from different points of view, right? Available, easy to run in different production environments, easy to run on the different like latencies or output requirement, but also easy to build engineering solutions like different programming languages. Can we run NLP stack inside big infrastructure in Python, in Java, C++, Scala, right? Go language. So I expect that in longer term, and it's, I would say, like data science now, right? If you consider 6-7 years ago to be a good business oriented data scientist, you will need to have a PhD in statistics or work a lot, right? Now there are a lot of people who bring very big value to applying data science to different businesses, but they're not necessarily a big PhDs in statistics or PhDs in data science or machine learning, right?
Yeah.
And that's what happens with NLP. So with these tools, NLP can bring like very big impact into different areas of different businesses. But by people who are like more traditional software engineer just applying. And I think it's a good example. I would say I remember like it was discussion about applications of data science and like in search and recommendations. And 95% of Silicon Valley big recommendations and search engines like Netflix, of course Google, were built not by people information retrieval people or machine learning people. Most of systems built by software engineering people. And I believe having NLP available, easy accessible in different production environments, different languages, different development environments, will enable such that we can exploit NLP, apply many business areas by people who are not like PhDs in NLP, by people, traditional software engineers. They can learn, of course they will not know everything about NLP, but still they can bring very significant big impact on their companies, their businesses, their customers through applying NLP techniques within their software stack.
So do you think it's quite a transferable? I guess it's a good place to start being a programmer. Obviously, that's where you started, right? In 95, 96. Is that the most natural way into NLP? Or I see a lot of people coming from linguistics-based educational background that then move into NLP. Like, do you need to be a great programmer, I guess is my question.
To build systems, you need to be a good programmer, right? And majority of NLP applications still will be not just about tuning models, finding the best parameters, finding the best network architecture. Still majority of as we discussed, majority of NLP applications will be by applying NLP to more and more different more and more different systems, right? Not just we have a system that classifies documents, let's improve 5% more, whatever accuracy metrics we have, 10% more. It will be just part of the work. Most of NLP benefits will be expanding NLP to more and more different systems. And it will require a cost of building the systems or integrating NLP platforms or NLP systems within these systems. So it will be a lot of software engineering efforts. And of course, to build software systems, one need to be a good software engineer. And also about how many linguistic master degrees or PhDs we have versus software engineer, right? There are many more software engineering people. So certainly linguistic is good background and helps to go deeply into many NLP areas and apply it. But overall, what I see, it will be driven more by building software systems efforts.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. So there was one thing I wanted to touch on. I see so many good people in this space that have had some form of dealing with University of Washington. You as an assistant professor there, right, for a period of time. Why does that place breed so many good NLP folks?
I was a visiting researcher. I was not assistant professor in University of Washington. In 2003, I was in the University of Bolzano, Italy, and PhD student. And I visited here, Professor Alan Halevi. I visited as visiting researcher. I was not.
I see. Yeah.
They have a really good school in the University of Washington related to NLP, and I think it's driven by multiple factors, right? First, University of Washington was always very practical oriented, right? It was not doing some theoretical research. And there are multiple reasons why, of course, and one of the important, like we have Microsoft here, right now Amazon here. So there are a lot of big industrial companies, and the university was collaborating with them. And one of them, and it was one of the drives why research in the University of Washington is so much practical driven rather than doing some theoretical problems. And yeah, I don't know very well. So was this university so well? Why did they decided to invest and hire so many good people? But certainly you have quite good research here in NLP and related things like Orin Etzioni, right? He's here since 90s. So he had this multiple kind of centers of really good people, and then they built schools. They had students who become professors now and so on. Yeah, so certainly I don't know fully historical reasons why they invested to NLP, but certainly I see it now that it's a very good school in that area.
Yeah, I mean, look, there's many that have fantastic programs, and so many talented people are coming out of the schools in the US, but that one in particular always seems to come up, and I don't think I've ever spoken to someone who isn't really well respected in this space that hasn't had some form of dealing with these guys or had someone on the team from UW. So yeah, I was intrigued by that. So when someone's looking from the outside about they're an aspiring NLP researcher or scientist, and they want to figure out what are the core fundamental skills that I'm going to need to really be taken seriously in this space. So you mentioned programming. Are there any particular languages that work well?
Yeah, it's a good question. As like a lot of NLP, I would say research work now done is in Python. Is in Python environment, right? Because PyTorch is in Python, and now a lot of deep learning in NLP are doing on top of PyTorch. So certainly Python is one of the kind of environment, at least for the first stage, when you train models, when you design models. So certainly Python, good engineering understanding of Python, and Python, I would say, ecosphere is pretty important to be a successful both researcher and actually engineer in NLP, because a lot of work will be done in Python, especially at that level.
Okay.
Next, of course, then how to run it in production. And Python is good, in Python, base systems are good enough for some applications of NLP, right? Especially if you do some offline processing, low latency through output times, right? It's fine. Of course, there are many NLP applications like search. I assume you have a search like Zillow search or Google and so on. You have a query coming to you from user, and you have to reply to this query within 200 milliseconds, right? And NLP is just a small part of this 200 milliseconds.
Right.
So you have to build a very efficient NLP systems which can run multiple different models. And out of 200 milliseconds, you will have 50 milliseconds for NLP part. So 50 milliseconds is your limit, and you have to run big, serious NLP stack of search engine. Is dozens of models. How to run those models within this period of time for a billion of queries per day. So you have 10 to the power 4, 10,000 and more queries per second. So how to build NLP systems which can in 10,000 queries per second within 50 milliseconds per query can do pretty serious inference. Of course, it's not doable in Python, and then it comes how you can build for this particular types of systems NLP stacks, and then you use more efficient languages like either C++ or Java, or some people built on Golang, something. So it will require a lot of. So it depends of your applications. For some applications of NLP, Python is perfect and catch 100% of whatever you need to do. But there are many, many, many applications of NLP when you need NLP inference extremely fast, extremely efficient. Sometimes also it requires training over huge, large data sets, billions of records per day over 1 year. At that level, you need to build the same NLP training procedures more efficiently than Python. So it depends. But again, Python is most focused for NLP, but still, I feel a large-scale distributed system, languages to build them is another very important engineering foundations to build NLP systems.
Cool. And in your career, Andrei, you've been heavily involved in search specifically, but does natural language processing transfer from business to business? Is it the same? Or where I'm going with this, if you went and worked for a let's say a drug discovery company and you were focused on medical records, and then you went to another pharma business, is that something that's going to be quite attractive, or is language, no matter what the business on the space? Do you know what I mean?
So if you say like, is it like the same NLP, right? What I understand your question.
Yeah. Do you need specific industry knowledge in the finance space doing NLP if you wanted to go and work there, or is that kind of skill set transferable from industry to industry?
Half and half. Certainly, like
Okay.
there are core NLP foundations which are applicable everywhere, and like it's very important to have them to be successful in any of these areas.
Okay.
But certainly, domain knowledge helps you a lot. Like for example, sorry, a little bit cold. Like in Walmart, when we were designing search and understanding particular problems for different search parts of categories, like like search for apparel is different for them search for electronics. It's different than search for home appliances. Understanding domain helps you a lot. So like like, and usually typically if someone is very strong in NLP, it's possible quite fast to train person in domain, so people get the skills quite fast. But like so half and half, like like having, even I would say like perhaps a strong NLP background is 70%, and like understanding domain is 30% for majority of programs. Of course, it may change for different areas. Some areas more domain dependent, but still you need both of them to be successful, to launch successful big impact projects.
Yeah, that makes sense. From a recruitment perspective, we're often asked by hiring managers to find people that have experience with medical or clinical records for a business like that. I guess just some of the wording, the terminologies and stuff like that makes it a little bit easy to understand if you've done it before. Now we do have a question coming from YouTube from Amin. Can Professor Andrei talk about the legal requirements that NLP applications need to satisfy when used in real-world environments, and how that might affect the engineering and derivation of these models?
Legal requirements. I'm not expert in legal, just like talking as someone from leadership and engineering positions. There may be different like legal implications, like like for example, compliance, right? Many industries are regulated by different compliance regulations, right? And it may be different. It can imply like what it can imply what data you can log, like for you, like certainly NLP is good to have as much data as possible, but because of compliance, you may not store some data, or you must remove some data, and so on, right? This one of, so like sometimes legal requirements imply some through compliance and so on, imply some restrictions on NLP. This one of the part. But another part, I can say that frequently NLP actually can help to businesses to satisfy these legal requirements. Like, so for example, like there may be a compliance requirement if your company does a customer service through conversations, right? Sometimes there are compliance, like legal requirements, what this customer service should be done and how, depending on industry, right? How to check if all your agents do that, how well they do this. And NLP is really great to train and under like in fair understanding conversations. Was it requiring? Does it satisfy the legal requirements? So I would say first, legal requirements apply to NLP. Sometimes some restrictions, like what data you can store, can kind of create some changes how you have to apply and do your NLP. But another way, how NLP related to legal requirements, NLP can actually help companies to be better compliant, to improve legal requirements, more. So,
yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. So look, I wanted to ask you from your perspective what the future of NLP looks like. So and this probably is going to be quite helpful for people who are aspiring as well in this space to think about what direction they want to go in. So we've mentioned that there's probably that wide approach in the short term, using it in different functions across the business. But what about long term? Are we ever going to be able to create an NLP or have a computer understand or think truly like a human? Do you think that's possible?
Frankly speaking, I'm a bit pessimistic about that, right? Because
Yeah,
our understanding of human thinking of like is still like like if you consider neuroscience and like there are different aspects of neuroscience, so we don't understand very well how humans think. So can we model
mm,
that? Certainly not in near future, right? Can we solve some particular problems which humans think and understand? Yes, of course. Like look at the huge progress in computer vision was done recently, right? Many
yep,
tasks, many tasks were like you like if you asked 10 years ago, can we do so well this task? It was impossible to predict, right? Now we're doing many
yep,
tasks so well in computer vision. Or like automated speech recognition. Like, if you remember, like SR systems 10 years ago, you talk to your car, it does not like you recognize like very few of your words, right? Now huge progress in, of course, it's still far from being perfect, but huge progress in automated speech recognition. So can we solve many of these problems in the way comparable to human? Yes, we can. And recent progress in NLP shows that many tasks NLP does now better than human experts, like you basically
hmm,
right of the art models. So, like, what if you say progress about NLP in long term about NLP? So again, like like there is a lot of media attention to like chatbot dialogue. This very important area, but again, talking about horizontal explosion. So I first like if you consider, let's say, up to 10 years horizon, I consider huge explosion of NLP applications. Just there will be big progress in models first, but second, making them available to multiple different software applications just by making this applications and training of these models and tunings much simpler. It will be very big progress and explosion of NLP everywhere. Second, I believe like taking into account current progress, like everybody wants to make a good conversational interface to their business. Like many companies try, right? Still, there are all these conversational interfaces, chatbots. They're very, very kind of rudimentary, right? If you want to give
hmm,
a call to your financial institution, a bank, right, and first to go through the voice assistant, right? It's
yeah,
very mechanical. Like like the way you talk to them, it's like like uh, tell me
yeah,
number one your account balance, number two
yeah.
whatever. Uh, is it possible to make this customer services like I don't say generic conversation, but like really a domain specific conversation, like other customer support of product you buy, answering your questions about your air ticket or about your hotel or about your bank account? Will it be possible in 10 years to make this particular type of business oriented consumer facing applications close to human interaction? Yes, I believe there are a lot of reasons to believe that like if you consider 10 years span, again I
A
don't
lot
say
of time.
yeah, no, like I think maybe 5 years even more reasonable, like
Yeah,
not for everybody, like for best technology companies. And I'm talking 10 years, will I Chase or Wells Fargo or any like normal bank have something like that? Will it be widespread? Like certainly I think it's possible, right? So having domain like general of course AI, but domain specific AI comparable to human agent, most probably it will
yeah.
be possible.
Yeah, I think we've made a lot of exciting progress, and having the opportunity to sit here as a recruiter and see how businesses are using this. Um, this is kind of why I wanted to have this conversation topic, because everyone kind of wants to move in this direction. It's just like, okay, where can we start applying it and how can we use it? And I mean, when you bring in an NLP researcher or engineer, are you going to see an immediate return of investment as a business, or does it take time to actually start seeing that kickback?
It depends, right? So I saw many times when you can get immediate impact from NLP applications to business, measurable impact, significant impact, right?
Yeah.
And just because there are so many low-hanging fruits, like you can imagine, and I'm not talking about only search engines when NLP immediately improves a lot of stuff, right? Like you have your commerce search engine, by understanding category of query, you can bring better results or whatever, right? Immediate impact, double-digit percentage, so on. even more like traditional business. You have some system based on documents. Can you extract information from document and understand this and route it to better person? Or if something going wrong in your business, can you, by extracting proper information and then searching for anomalies, can find something going wrong? Immediate impact, right? Yes, so like part of the answer, many companies can get immediate impact from having a good NLP researcher and engineer building like NLP-based software systems. I think in most cases, what I saw, like limits on this impact were not more like, is this person good in NLP or not? It's more like if business is ready, it's more like business part. Is business ready to create proper environment for these people? First, does business understand what a real problem followed by NLP?
Yeah.
Is business ready to build systems, right? First, and building an NLP problem is just 10% of the problem. How to integrate this model inside your software process? How to make your business processes based on the software processes? So, like biggest perhaps gap is like business ready and business applying this transformation and using NLP to change the business. This is a kind of limiting factor.
Yeah, I think that's probably not just specific to NLP, really. That looming question of why do you need this is something that businesses seem to skip over. They're just like, because everyone else has got it. It's up, but that's not the right reason to then go out and spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on salaries and millions of dollars on research. So it makes a lot of sense, think about the business problem. And I think as a candidate who's looking to get into the space, like what problems do you want to approach and solve in natural language, and almost pose yourself as an expert and go down that route and learn about it. And I think you'll see a lot of success when moving business to business. I guess as a kind of roundup then, Andrei, what would be your advice to anyone who's aspiring or currently in the NLP field to do or to think about that would make them that little bit more successful in their journey?
It's interesting question, right? I think if let's say you say someone coming to maybe someone has good PhD in NLP, but they're coming in industry. I think my first advice would be to these people who starting the NLP journey, right? In industry, perhaps would be first to go to company which already use NLP at large scale to learn how it so people has already good NLP, but the big problem how to make and apply them to business. And I think the best way is to go and to learn how successful companies which apply NLP, like again Google, Apple, Zillow, Amazon, Walmart Labs, go and work in this environment where NLP is not something new and people looking where they want to apply. Just go to companies where NLP is actually already a part of the business, it's applicable, it's already applied to the business, and see how it works inside the business. So kind of I think first one, if already you know NLP well, go and learn how NLP works in an industrial settings. I think it's very important. And then it was if you get this knowledge, it will be much more easy to go to a company, let's say some big financial institutions wants to apply NLP. And again, what we discussed, NLP modeling, NLP tuning per se is just small part of the problem. Another is building systems about it. And if you have this knowledge how to build systems based on NLP, how to build business processes applied to NLP, this is another very important knowledge. And I think it's very important to acquire this knowledge to be successful with NLP career.
Yeah. And in technology, I feel like if you're able to develop your soft skills, it makes any technical position that little bit easier. I think it will progress you. So you're someone that's able to talk to people on a non-technical level. Did you do anything proactively to be better at that, Andrei, or was that just something that kind of came natural to you?
No, it took a lot of learning, right? I would say if you want to be successful, not just NLP, but in general applications of AI, in general artificial intelligence, machine learning, and especially if you work in business-focused companies, right? It requires a lot of, I would say, this capability, how to advocate your technical part, how to build connections with stakeholders, how to explain what advantages they can get from them, right? how to help them measure these advantages to business, to customer satisfaction. So it took me a lot of time to learn this. Actually, like I would say in 2006 when I started my career, I did not have strong skills of communications, and as to be a successful NLP engineer and then especially a successful NLP leader, it requires a lot of these skills like advocacy of your team, advocacy of your products, advocacy of your technologies. Actually, how you understand what NLP problems particular line of business have. You have to really work with them together and understand their vision, their needs, their vision of the business in future, right? So understanding, building proper information, knowledge exchange with stakeholders, helping them to understand how NLP can help them. So it requires quite a big part of that to be successful in this area.
Nice. Yeah, definitely something to keep in mind for anyone who's looking to get into the space. I have one last question, just because I know that you're quite well traveled, Andrei. Having spent a lot of time in different countries, London, Russia, Switzerland, the USA. Have I missed any?
Italy, Austria.
Yeah. So who is the most advanced country when it comes to NLP machine learning? Is it America? I mean, they always seem to be ahead of everyone on a lot of things, but is America the best place for NLP?
It's a very interesting question, right? I think certainly United States is leading in industrial NLP, right? So if you consider like traditional, like computational linguistics, there are a lot of very strong European schools which are like really good. Like there is very good, there are like group in Vienna, there is group in Amsterdam, right, and so on. There are people in Italy very strong in NLP and more like academia. But certainly, if you consider about industrial applications of NLP, certainly United States companies are the strongest one. Of course, there are like multiple small, like I would say, exclusions, like Yandex in Russia, right? Very strong team, very good NLP, but or like Google Zurich office, like for example. So it's like Google American company, but in Switzerland, right?
Yeah.
And they have very strong groups there, like incredibly strong group. But certainly, like if you consider industrial NLP, certainly United States, if you consider like academic NLP research, more like especially computational linguistics, there are a lot of good European schools, but industrial NLP, most often in the United States.
Sure. And actually, I've got one more question for you because it just made me think. So if we're talking NLP globally, obviously it's a language-based use of technology or language-based use of way of creating tools. If you were someone who learned NLP in Russia, for example, and then you came to America or England or whatever it might be, somewhere with a different language, spoken language, can you still do NLP in that country, or do you need to know the home language, the mother language of the location that you're working?
It's like what we discussed with like doing it to understand domain, right? A lot of NLP stuff is quite transferable, right? Like like for example, perhaps the biggest international experience I had in Google, right? And I launched a lot of changes like for Thai, Japanese, many Indian languages, like without knowledge of language and understanding, right? Just because algorithms were like easily extendable to other languages, and of course we needed like language-based raters, annotators, but like engineering efforts was. So certainly there is some core knowledge which kind of expandable, but of course for many deep NLP work, like assume you're building search engine for Russia, right? And it's Russian language, like inflections, everything is very different from English. Or you're building search engine for Chinese, or when token splitting is very important. And it was one of the big problems why Google did not compete well with Chinese market at the beginning, because it was not enough efforts to build like good search for Chinese and understanding how it works for Chinese. Certainly kind of can do like certainly basic knowledge, basic NLP understanding is quite transferable, but then of course for each language it requires a lot of additional efforts to be successful there.
Interesting. Yeah. And that's where the annotators would come in. Are they typically they speak the language that you're doing the work in?
Yeah, and like annotators helps even if you don't understand language, but really go deeply and develop good NLP stack for that particular language requires understanding of language.
Interesting. Well, look, I really appreciate your insights, Andrei, and it's been a pleasure catching up. I'm looking forward to doing this again. So if anyone has any questions after the show, feel free to ping them over to myself or Andrei. We'd be happy to get them answered for you. Thank you for everyone that contributed today and tuned in. Thanks so much, Andrei, for being a part of this, and I look forward to catching up with you again soon.
Yeah, thank you very much. It was nice talking to you. Thank you very much for inviting, and thank you very much, everybody, for listening.
Yeah. All right. Cheers. Thanks, guys. See you next Thursday. Well, no, I won't see you next Thursday. It's Thanksgiving. I think we're back on with Amy Miller on the 3rd of November, I believe. So 11 o'clock a.m. Eastern, where we're going to actually be talking about internal versus external recruitment and how to make the best out of those partnerships. So I look forward to seeing you there, guys.
And happy Thanksgiving.